Ambassador Krell stood before the Galactic Council, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of dismissal. The chamber filled with representatives from 100 worlds, all watching him with varying degrees of attention. Some floated in specialized tanks, others perched on elevated platforms designed for their unique physiologies. The Ghost Fleet, the Phantom Warriors, tales told to frighten young cadets. Ambassador Krell's voice echoed through the vast space. Nothing more than ancient superstition, he declared. The council members shifted in their seats. Some nodded in agreement. Others remained silent, remembering the old stories their grandparents once told. 500 years had passed since humanity vanished from known space. Once they had been vibrant members of the galactic community. Their blue planet, Earth, had sent explorers and diplomats across the stars. They built stations, established trade routes, and shared their peculiar customs with anyone willing to listen. Humans laughed easily and made friends quickly. They were known for their curiosity and their strange determination to never give up. Then came the prototype. The humans called it the USDF Phantom. It was their most advanced warship, equipped with experimental technology that could bend space and time. The ship would jump across vast distances in mere moments, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. The technology was revolutionary, dangerous, and completely untested at full scale. The Phantom launched on a clear morning from Earth's orbital dock. Thousands watched as the massive vessel powered up its experimental drive. The test was simple. Jump to the edge of the solar system and return. The crew of 300 waved to the cameras. Captain Maria Santos smiled confidently from the bridge. "Everything is ready," she told ground control. "We will see you in 3 hours." The ship activated its drive. A brilliant flash of light filled the sky. Then silence. The Phantom was gone. 3 hours passed. Then 3 days. Then 3 weeks. Search parties found nothing. No debris, no distress signals, no trace of the ship or its crew. It was as if the Phantom had simply ceased to exist. The loss devastated Earth. Other nations blamed the Defense Force for rushing the test. Political tensions rose. Within a year, humanity withdrew from the galactic community. Their embassies closed. Their colonies went dark. Within 10 years, Earth itself stopped responding to all communication. Ships sent to investigate found the solar system empty, abandoned. The humans were gone. 5 centuries later, humanity had become a curiosity. Museums displayed their artifacts. Scholars studied their history. Children learned about the species that vanished without explanation. And some, the very old or the very superstitious, whispered about the Ghost Fleet. They said the Phantom still sailed the stars, protecting the galaxy from the shadows. They said it appeared during great battles, turning the tide before vanishing once more. Ambassador Krell dismissed these stories with a wave of his upper left arm. The council had more pressing concerns than fairy tales. The Devourers had arrived. The Devourers were unlike any enemy the galaxy had faced. They were not conquerors seeking territory or resources. They were a hive mind that consumed everything in their path. Entire planets stripped clean, populations absorbed into their collective consciousness. They moved through space like a plague, leaving nothing but empty worlds behind. System after system fell. The Council scrambled to organize a defense, but the Devourers adapted to every tactic. They learned from each battle and became stronger. Fear spread through the galaxy faster than any disease. In a small research facility on the Outer Rim, Dr. Selenai worked late into the night. She was a xenoarchaeologist, one of the few who specialized in human artifacts. Her office overflowed with data crystals, ancient tablets, and dusty relics from Earth. Most of her colleagues considered human studies a dead end. Why study a species that no longer existed? But Selenai believed there was more to the story. She had spent years piecing together fragments of data from the Phantom's final transmission. The official report said the transmission was corrupted, meaningless static. Selenai disagreed. She had found patterns in the noise, equations hidden in what others dismissed as random data. Tonight, she finally cracked the code. The data crystals glowed softly as she ran the decryption program. Her translator device hummed, converting ancient human script into her own language. What she read made her blood run cold. The Phantom had not disappeared. It had become unstuck in space-time. The experimental drive created a quantum anchor, tethering the ship to multiple points in time simultaneously. The crew experienced only moments while centuries passed in normal space. They existed in a probability wake, seeing possible futures and past events all at once. The final log entry was from Captain Santos herself. Her words were fragmented but clear. "We see it all," she wrote. "Every timeline, every possibility. We cannot come home, but we can protect them. We will become the shield they need, even if they never know we are there." Selene leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. If the logs were true, the Ghost Fleet was not a myth. The Phantom was real, sailing through time itself, watching over the galaxy. And if the old stories were accurate, it appeared during moments of greatest need. She thought of the Devourers, advancing unchecked through civilized space. She thought of the Council, desperate and afraid. And she wondered if humanity's greatest creation was about to return. The galaxy needed heroes. Perhaps the ghosts of the past would answer that call. Selene reached for her communication device. Someone needed to hear this. Someone needed to know that the legends might be true. As she began composing her message, a priority alert flashed across her screen. The Devourers had launched a massive assault. The Tarvo system was under attack. The Council was mustering every available ship for a final stand. Selene looked at the decoded logs, then at the alert. Timing was everything. If the Phantom truly protected the galaxy, if it appeared when hope seemed lost, then perhaps it was already on its way. She sent her message to the Council with trembling hands. They would think her mad. They would dismiss her findings as fantasy. But she had to try. Across the galaxy, fleets assembled, soldiers prepared for battle, civilians evacuated their homes. Everyone knew this might be the end. The Devourers had never been stopped before. Why would this time be different? But in the dark spaces between stars, something stirred. A ship that existed in many times and no time simultaneously felt the ripples of approaching catastrophe. The crew, sustained by forces they barely understood, watched the unfolding crisis through their fragmented perception of reality. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge of the Phantom, looking at a galaxy 500 years older than the one she left. Her crew, weary beyond measure, stood ready. The ghost ship prepared to become real once more. The legends were about to be tested. The myth was about to become history. The Tarvo system blazed with weapon fire. Commander Vector stood on the bridge of the flagship steadfast, watching his fleet crumble before the Devourer assault. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes. Distress calls flooded the communication channels. He had commanded fleets for 30 years, survived a dozen wars, but nothing prepared him for this. The Devourer bioships moved like living creatures through space. Their hulls pulsed with organic matter. They fired weapons that seemed to grow from their bodies, launching projectiles that ate through shields and armor alike. When a ship was destroyed, the Devourers absorbed the debris, growing stronger with each kill. Commander Vector had assembled the largest defensive fleet in galactic history. 2,000 warships from 50 different species. It was not enough. The Devourers outnumbered them 3-1, and their hive mind coordinated attacks with perfect precision. Every tactical advantage the coalition tried was countered within minutes. A Devourer cruiser rammed into the frigate Dancing Star. The organic ship latched onto the hull and began consuming it. Crew members evacuated in escape pods, but many did not make it out in time. Vector watched helplessly as another ally fell. He had known the Dancing Star's captain for years. They had shared drinks after the last war, promising each other they would retire peacefully. That promise meant nothing now. "Deploy reserve squadrons to Sector 7, Vector ordered. His tactical officer scrambled to relay the command. The reserve squadrons launched, but they were already exhausted from previous engagements. This was the third major battle in 2 weeks. The fleet had no time to rest, no time to repair. They fought with damaged ships and wounded crews because there was no alternative. On Tarvos Prime, the largest planet in the system, evacuation transports struggled to carry refugees to safety. Millions crowded the spaceports. Families clutched their belongings, children cried. Elders prayed to their various gods. The transports could only take so many at a time. Everyone knew the horrible truth. Not everyone would escape. Dr. Selene watched the battle reports from her research station. She had sent her findings to the Council but received no response. They were too busy managing the crisis. She felt helpless, trapped far from the fighting with knowledge that might change everything. The decoded log sat on her desk, glowing softly in the dim light. Strange sensor readings began appearing on coalition scanners, ghost contacts that vanished before they could be identified. Officers dismissed them as sensor glitches caused by the intense fighting. Equipment malfunctioned all the time during battle. No one had time to investigate phantom readings, but the readings continued. A blip here, a flicker there. Something moved at the edge of the battlefield, invisible to conventional sensors but present nonetheless. The Devourers seemed agitated. Their usually perfect coordination faltered for brief moments. Ships paused mid-attack as if confused by something they could not identify. Commander Vector noticed the pattern. The enemy's behavior had changed. They were still winning, still overwhelming his forces, but something distracted them. He checked the sensor logs himself. The ghost readings clustered around areas where Devourer coordination broke down. Coincidence? Or something more? A priority message arrived from Seleni's research station. Vector almost deleted it. He had no time for academic theories. But something made him pause. The message header mentioned the Phantom. Vector's grandmother had told him stories about the Ghost Fleet when he was young. She swore she saw it once during the border wars, a massive ship that appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. He opened the message. Selene's words poured out in a rush. The decoded logs, the quantum anchor, the probability wake. The Phantom existed outside normal time, protecting the galaxy from threats across history. It appeared during moments of greatest need. Vector wanted to dismiss it as fantasy, but the ghost readings on his sensors suggested otherwise. Another wave of Devourers crashed into the Coalition lines. The carrier Bright Hope exploded, taking 300 crew members with it. Vector gripped his command chair. They were losing. Within hours, the fleet would be destroyed. Within days, Tarvos Prime would fall. The Devourers would consume another system and move on to the next, unless the myths were true. Unless humanity's lost ship still sailed among them. Vector looked at the ghost readings again. They were increasing in frequency and strength. Something was coming. Something big. On the surface of Tarvos Prime, an elderly woman watched the sky. Her name was Elena, and she was one of the last living descendants of Earth's colonial program. Her great-great-grandmother had been human, part of the generation that fled Earth after the Phantom's disappearance. Elena had grown up hearing stories about the old days, about humanity's courage and innovation. She remembered one story in particular. Her grandmother told it every year on the anniversary of humanity's disappearance. The Phantom would return, she said. When humanity's children needed it most, when all hope seemed lost, the ghost ship would come back. It would fight for those who could not fight for themselves. It would be the shield that protected the innocent. Elena had always thought it was just a story, a way to comfort children during dark times. But now, watching the battle rage above her world, she found herself believing. She whispered a prayer to ancestors she never knew. "Please," she said to the empty sky, "if you are real, if you are out there, we need you now." In the void between stars, the Phantom felt the call, not through any conventional communication, but through the probability wake that connected them to all moments in time. They saw the battle, past and present and future simultaneously. They saw the Devourers consuming world after world. They saw the Coalition's desperate stand. They saw Elena's prayer. Captain Santos turned to her crew. 500 years they had existed in this strange state between existence and non-existence. 500 years they had watched and waited and protected from the shadows. They were tired beyond imagination, but their duty remained clear. "All hands to battle stations," Santos ordered. Her crew moved with practiced efficiency. They had fought countless battles across multiple timelines. They had learned strategies that would not be invented for centuries. They had weapons powered by temporal distortions that could strike targets in multiple moments simultaneously. The Phantom began its approach to the Tarvos system. Reality bent around the ship as it moved through probability space. To outside observers, it would appear as nothing more than sensor ghosts. But soon, very soon, it would become solid. It would become real. The ghost would show itself. Back on the Steadfast, Commander Vector watched his fleet make its final stand. They formed a defensive sphere around Tarvos Prime, every ship pouring fire into the approaching Devourers. It was magnificent and futile. The enemy kept coming. They could not be stopped. The ghost readings on his sensors suddenly spiked. Every screen in the bridge flickered. The tactical display showed something massive emerging from nothing. Space itself seemed to tear open. And through that tear came a ship unlike anything anyone had seen in 500 years. The USDF Phantom had arrived. The myths were real. The legends were true. and the galaxy's greatest battle was about to begin. Reality fractured. That was the only way Commander Vector could describe what he witnessed. Space itself cracked like glass, and through those cracks poured light that should not exist. Colors that had no names. Energies that his sensors could not classify. The Phantom emerged from the impossible. The ship was massive, larger than any dreadnought in the Coalition fleet. Its hull bore the marks of countless battles, scorch marks from weapons that had not been invented yet, repairs made with materials that should not exist. The entire vessel shimmered, phasing in and out of visibility as if it could not decide whether to be real or not. Every sensor on the Steadfast went haywire. Temporal readings spiked off the charts. The ship existed in multiple time frames simultaneously, present and past and future all layered on top of each other. Looking at it hurt. The mind struggled to process something that should not be possible. The Devourers reacted immediately. Their hive mind sensed the anomaly and directed dozens of bioships toward the Phantom. They swarmed like insects, firing weapons that could dissolve armor and shields. The organic projectiles struck the Phantom's hull and simply vanished, absorbed by temporal distortions that surrounded the ship like an invisible shield. Then the Phantom opened fire. Weapon systems that defied physics lit up along its hull. Beams of condensed time struck Devourer ships, and something impossible happened. The enemy vessels aged centuries in seconds. Their organic hulls withered and died. Ships that were alive moments ago became ancient husks that crumbled into dust. Other weapons fired simultaneously, but they did not target where the Devourers were. They targeted where the Devourers would be. The Phantom could see probability, could perceive the future paths of enemy movement. It fired at empty space, and Devourer ships flew directly into those shots, unable to avoid attacks that predicted their every move. The hive mind recoiled. For the first time in their conquest of the galaxy, the Devourers encountered something they could not understand. Their collective consciousness tried to process the Phantom's existence and failed. The ship existed in too many moments at once. They could not predict it because it was already everywhere and nowhere. Commander Vector stared at his view screen, unable to speak. His tactical officer whispered something about weapon signatures matching ancient human designs. His communications officer tried desperately to establish contact with the ghost ship. All around them, the tide of battle shifted. The Coalition fleet rallied. Seeing the Phantom's devastating assault gave them hope. Ships that were retreating turned back to fight. Damaged vessels found new strength. They poured fire into the confused Devourer formation, taking advantage of the chaos the Phantom created. A Devourer battleship, one of their largest vessels, targeted the Phantom with its main weapon. The biocannon fired a concentrated burst of consuming energy that had destroyed moons. The projectile struck the Phantom dead center. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the projectile simply reversed its course and flew back toward the battleship that fired it. The Devourer vessel consumed itself with its own weapon. Dr. Seleni watched the battle feed from her research station, tears streaming down her face. She had been right. The legends were true. The Phantom existed. After 500 years, humanity's greatest creation had returned to protect the galaxy. She wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. On Tarvos Prime, Elena stood with others who refused to evacuate. They were too old or too stubborn to run. They watched the sky light up with weapon fire and saw something that defied explanation. A ship that looked like it belonged in a museum was single-handedly fighting an army. And winning, Elena laughed. It was a sound of pure joy mixed with disbelief. Her grandmother's stories were real. The Phantom had returned. She grabbed the person next to her and pointed at the sky. "Do you see it?" she shouted. "Do you see? They came back for us." Aboard the Phantom, Captain Santos stood on a bridge that existed in multiple time periods at once. She saw her crew as they were 500 years ago, young and confident. She saw them as they were now, aged by temporal strain and the weight of endless duty. She saw them as they would be if they survived what came next. "Focus fire on the command clusters," Santos ordered. Her weapons officer nodded and adjusted targeting parameters. They had fought the Devourers across multiple timelines. They knew the hive mind's weaknesses. They knew where to strike to cause maximum disruption. The Phantom moved through space like nothing the Coalition forces had seen. It accelerated and decelerated in ways that should tear a ship apart. It changed direction without turning. It was there and then suddenly somewhere else, as if distance meant nothing. The ship did not travel through space. It folded space around itself, but the Phantom was taking damage. The temporal shields that protected it flickered and failed in places. Ancient hull plating cracked under the strain of existing in multiple moments. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. System failures cascaded through sections of the ship. The Phantom had been fighting for 500 years without rest. It was dying. A massive explosion rocked the ship. A Devourer suicide vessel had managed to ram into the Phantom's lower hull. The organic matter began spreading, consuming the metal, trying to absorb the ghost ship into the hive mind. Engineering teams rushed to contain the breach, but the consuming was spreading faster than they could stop it. Santos felt the pain through her connection to the ship. The Phantom was more than metal and circuits. It was alive in ways that were hard to explain. It breathed temporal energy. It fed on probability, and now it was wounded, truly wounded in a way that even its temporal healing could not fix quickly enough. Communications finally managed to establish a link with the Coalition fleet. Static filled the channel. Interference from temporal distortions. Through the noise, Santos's voice came through. "This is Captain Maria Santos of the United Space Defense Force ship Phantom. We are here to help. Hold your positions and let us work." Commander Vector grabbed his communication device. "Captain Santos? But that's impossible. You disappeared 500 years ago. We thought you were dead. How are you here?" The response came broken by static. "Long story, Commander, very long. But right now focus on survival. We have been fighting these creatures across multiple timelines. We know their weaknesses. Follow our lead and we might just win this." "What happened to you?" Vector asked. "Where have you been?" "Protecting you," Santos replied simply. "We became trapped outside normal time during our test flight. We could not return home, so we did the only thing we could do. We became the guardians that the galaxy needed. We have been watching, fighting, shielding you from threats you never knew existed." The transmission cut out briefly, then returned. "We paid a price for this duty. Time is not kind to those who exist outside it, but we do not regret our choice." Vector felt his throat tighten. 500 years. 500 years they had fought alone, protecting a galaxy that thought them dead. The sacrifice was beyond comprehension. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Thank you for not abandoning us." Santos's voice softened. "We could never abandon you. You are humanity's children, all of you. Every species in this galaxy. We swore to protect life. That oath did not end just because we fell through time. Now let us finish this fight together." The Phantom fired again and the battle raged on. The ghost ship had revealed itself. The myth had become real. But the hardest part of the fight was still ahead. The Devourer Queen ship was coming, and nothing in any timeline had prepared them for what that would bring. The battle continued for hours. The Phantom fought alongside the Coalition fleet, its temporal weapons carving through Devourer formations. Ships that had been on the verge of destruction found themselves protected by impossible shields that appeared from nowhere. Damaged vessels received targeting data that guided their shots with perfect accuracy. Commander Vector coordinated his forces with the Phantom's movements. It was like fighting alongside a ghost that could predict the future. Every time he thought a position would be overrun, the Phantom was there. Every time the enemy seemed to gain an advantage, temporal distortions disrupted their formation. But he could see the cost. The Phantom's shields flickered more frequently. Hull breaches opened along its flanks. The ship's phase shifting became erratic, sometimes solidifying at the worst moments, making it vulnerable to enemy fire. Whatever power kept it existing across multiple timelines was failing. The ghost ship was becoming more real, more solid, and therefore more mortal. Dr. Seleni worked frantically from her research station. She had established a secure channel to the Phantom and was downloading everything she could. The ship's logs, its crew records, 500 years of history that existed outside normal space. She needed to preserve this. If the Phantom did not survive, at least their story would. As she read through the logs, tears flowed freely. The crew's sacrifice was beyond anything she imagined. They knew within weeks of their accident what had happened to them. They knew they could never go home. Captain Santos had given her crew a choice. They could try to force their way back to normal time, possibly destroying themselves in the process. Or they could accept their fate and use their condition to protect the galaxy. The vote was unanimous. All 300 crew members chose duty over survival. They chose to become guardians that the galaxy would never know about. For 500 years of objective time, they sailed through probability storms. For them, it was only weeks. Weeks of non-stop fighting, watching civilizations rise and fall, preventing catastrophes that would have ended billions of lives. They had stopped wars before they started. They had deflected asteroids that would have destroyed worlds. They had sabotaged invasion fleets and disabled weapons that would have torn reality itself. All without recognition, all without thanks, because the moment anyone knew they existed, the timeline would change, and their ability to help would be compromised. But staying hidden meant staying outside time. And time, even when you existed outside it, took its toll. The crew was aging in ways that normal biology could not explain, their bodies sustained by temporal energy, but their minds and spirits wearing thin. They were dying slowly, stretched too thin across too many moments. Selene read one personal log from a young engineer named Marcus Chen. He wrote about missing his family, about wondering if they even remembered him. He wrote about the strange dreams he had of lives he might have lived if the test flight had succeeded. He wrote about the pride he felt every time they saved a world, even though no one would ever know. The final entry in his log was simple. If anyone finds this, know that we did not regret our choice. We were honored to serve. Tell our families we loved them. Tell the galaxy that humanity never gave up. Aboard the Phantom, Captain Santos walked through corridors that existed in multiple time periods at once. She saw her crew at their stations, young and old, simultaneously. Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka at navigation, her hands moving across controls that were both ancient and brand new. Commander James Rodriguez in engineering, fighting to keep systems online that should have failed centuries ago. She stopped at the medical bay. Dr. Sarah Kim looked up from her work. The doctor's face showed the strain of 500 years compressed into weeks. How many more can we take? Santos asked quietly. How much longer can we hold together? Dr. Kim checked her medical readouts. Not long, Captain. The temporal field that sustains us is breaking down. Our bodies are trying to exist in too many moments. Some crew members are experiencing memory fragmentation. They remember things that happened and things that might have happened with equal clarity. We are losing ourselves to the timeline. Santos nodded slowly. She felt it too. The weight of 500 years pressing down on her. The memories of countless battles blending together until she could not remember which timeline she was actually in. Sometimes she saw her crew as they were during training. Sometimes she saw them as they would be if they had retired peacefully. Sometimes she saw their graves on Earth, honored heroes who died in service. A proximity alarm shattered her thoughts. New contacts emerging from FTL, big ones. The tactical display showed something that made her blood run cold. The Devourer Queen ship had arrived. The Queen ship was not a vessel. It was a world. Organic matter the size of a moon pulsing with the collective consciousness of billions of absorbed beings. It emerged from faster-than-light travel like a nightmare taking physical form. Smaller, Devourer vessels swarmed around it like parasites around a host. Commander Vector watched the sensor readings with growing horror. The Queen ship began consuming Tarvos Prime's atmosphere from orbit. Massive tendrils extended down toward the planet's surface, drawing up air and water and life itself. The planet was being eaten alive. The Coalition fleet opened fire on the Queen ship. Weapons that could destroy battleships barely scratched its surface. The organic hull absorbed energy and grew stronger. It was feeding on their attacks, becoming more powerful with each shot. This was how the Devourers conquered galaxies. They were unstoppable. Santos stood on her bridge, looking at the impossible enemy. She had seen this moment across multiple timelines. She knew what happened next in every possibility. The Coalition lost. The Queen ship consumed Tarvos Prime. The Devourers continued their expansion. Within a generation, the galaxy fell. Unless someone changed the equation. She looked at her crew, her family, these people who had sacrificed everything for a galaxy that did not know they existed. They were dying anyway. The temporal strain was killing them. They had weeks at most before they simply ceased to be, scattered across too many moments in time. But they could choose how they died. They could choose to matter. Santos made her decision. She opened a channel to Commander Vector. Commander, we have analyzed the Queen ship across multiple timelines. There is only one way to destroy it: a temporal collapse. We overload our quantum drive and create a probability cascade that erases the Queen ship from all timelines simultaneously. Vector understood immediately. What about your ship? Your crew? The question hung in the air. Santos smiled sadly. We will be consumed in the collapse. The Phantom will cease to exist across all moments in time. We will be erased as thoroughly as the Queen ship, but the galaxy will survive. There must be another way, Vector protested. You have fought for 500 years. You deserve to rest, to go home. Santos shook her head gently. We have no home to return to, Commander. Our time ended 5 centuries ago, but we can ensure that future generations have a home. That is enough for us. Santos turned to her crew. 300 faces looked back at her. They had heard the plan. They knew what it meant. And to her eternal pride, every single one of them nodded. They were ready. The ghost ship would become legend one final time, and this time the legend would save the galaxy. Captain Santos moved through her ship one final time. She touched the walls that had been her home for 500 years. She felt the hum of the quantum drive, the heartbeat of the vessel that had carried them through impossible journeys. The Phantom was alive in ways that defied explanation, and soon it would die. Her crew prepared for the final mission. Each person worked with quiet determination. No one panicked. No one questioned the decision. They had voted again just to be certain. The result was the same as it had been 500 years ago. Unanimous. They would give everything to protect the galaxy they loved. Dr. Seleni received a message directly from Captain Santos. The transmission was filled with data, complete records of the Phantom's journey, technical specifications, personal logs from every crew member, the history of humanity's greatest sacrifice preserved for future generations. Santos's voice came through clearly. Doctor, we are sending you everything. Our journey, our discoveries, our mistakes and triumphs. Please share this with the galaxy. Let them know what we did, not for glory or recognition, but so they understand what humanity stood for. We believed that life was worth protecting. We believed that sacrifice meant something. We believed in hope even when hope seemed impossible. Seleni's hand shook as she saved the files. I will tell them, Captain. I promise. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten. The galaxy will know what you did for us. They will remember, Santos smiled. Thank you. That is all we ask. Take care of them, Doctor. Take care of our descendants. They are humanity's future now. The transmission ended. Seleni sat in silence, tears streaming down her face. She had discovered the truth about the Phantom only to watch it die. Commander Vector ordered the Coalition fleet to fall back. He wanted to protest the Phantom's plan. He wanted to find another way. But he knew there was no alternative. The Queen ship would destroy everything if left unchecked. The Phantom's sacrifice was the only path to victory, and that knowledge made him sick. On Tarvos Prime, Elena and the others who refused to evacuate watched the sky. They could see the Queen ship now, a dark mass that blocked out the stars. They could feel the planet dying as the Devourers consumed its atmosphere. This was the end. Unless the impossible happened. Unless the ghost ship truly could save them. Elena closed her eyes and spoke to her ancestors. My grandmother told me you would come. She said humanity never abandoned its children. She was right. Thank you for watching over us. Thank you for everything you sacrificed. Her voice broke. We will remember you. I promise we will remember. Aboard the Phantom, the crew gathered in the main assembly hall. Santos stood before them, looking at faces she had known for what felt like both weeks and centuries. She had led these people through impossible situations. She had asked them to give up everything, and they had never faltered. I do not have adequate words for what you mean to me, Santos began. Her voice was steady despite the emotion behind it. You are the finest crew any captain could ask for. You sacrificed your lives, your futures, your very existence in normal time. And you did it without hesitation. You did it because it was right. She looked at each face. Lieutenant Tanaka, who navigated them through probability storms. Commander Rodriguez, who kept the impossible engines running. Dr. Kim, who kept them alive against all odds. 300 souls who became legends without ever seeking fame. We will not be remembered as individuals, Santos continued. We will become myths, stories told to children, legends that people half believe. But our actions will echo through time. Every life we saved will continue. Every world we protected will flourish. Every species we shielded will grow and explore and create. That is our legacy. That is immortality. The crew stood silent. Then slowly they began to applaud. It started with one person, then another, until the entire hall erupted in sound. They were not applauding Santos. They were applauding each other. They were celebrating their choice. They were honoring their sacrifice. All hands to stations, Santos ordered. Let us show this queen what happens when it threatens our galaxy. Let us remind the universe why humanity earned its place among the stars. Let us make this final stand count. The crew dispersed to their positions. Systems powered up to maximum. The quantum drive began its overload sequence. Temporal energy flooded through the ship's systems. The Phantom started to glow with light that should not exist. It was preparing to die, and in dying to save everything, the Phantom accelerated toward the Queen ship. It phased through normal space, existing in multiple timelines simultaneously. The Devourers sensed something wrong. The hive mind tried to understand what was happening. Their collective consciousness recognized the threat too late. Santos sat in her command chair, watching the Queen ship grow larger on her view screen. She thought about Earth. She thought about the home she left 500 years ago. She wondered if anyone still remembered the blue planet where humanity began. She hoped they did. She hoped the galaxy would keep that memory alive. She thought about her crew's families. Parents who never knew what happened to their children. Siblings who wondered if their loved ones suffered. Partners who waited for a return that never came. Santos hoped they found peace. She hoped they knew somehow that their family members died as heroes. The Phantom reached the Queen ship's outer membrane. Smaller Devourer vessels tried to intercept, but the ghost ship phased through them like they did not exist. Nothing could stop what came next. The quantum drive reached critical mass. Temporal energy built to levels that would tear reality apart. Santos opened one final channel to Commander Vector. Tell them we were honored to serve. Tell them humanity's greatest strength was not our weapons or our technology. It was our unwillingness to abandon those who needed help. Tell them that we loved them, all of them, every species and every world, and tell them to keep the stars safe for us. We will, Captain, Vector replied, his voice breaking. We will remember. The galaxy will remember. Your sacrifice will never be forgotten. Santos nodded. That is all we need. Goodbye, Commander. Take care of our galaxy. She closed the channel and looked at her crew one last time. They were ready. They were unafraid. They were humanity at its finest. It has been my honor to serve with you, Santos said quietly. I would not change a single moment. I would make the same choice 1,000 times. You are my family. You are my pride. You are everything that is good about humanity. The crew smiled. Some cried. Some laughed. They held each other's hands. They stood together, united in purpose and sacrifice. The quantum drive reached the breaking point. Reality began to fracture. Time started to collapse. The Phantom plunged into the heart of the Queen ship. And for one brilliant, impossible moment, it existed everywhere and everyone simultaneously. The ghost ship became the most real thing in the universe. And then it detonated, erasing itself and the Queen ship from every timeline that ever was or ever would be. The explosion was unlike anything in recorded history. It was not fire or energy or matter. It was the collapse of probability itself. Space and time folded inward, creating a cascade that rippled backward and forward through every moment the Queen ship had existed or would exist. The Queen ship simply stopped being, not destroyed, not killed, erased. Every moment it had existed across all timelines vanished. The Devourer hive mind screamed in confusion as its central intelligence disappeared. Billions of connected consciousnesses suddenly found themselves alone, disconnected, unable to function. The smaller Devourer vessels scattered. Without the Queen to direct them, they were lost. They fled into deep space, running from something they could not understand. The Coalition fleet pursued, destroying what they could, but most escaped. It did not matter. Without their Queen, the Devourers were no longer a threat. They would never coordinate again. Where the Phantom had been, there was now nothing. Not even debris. The ship had erased itself so completely that it was as if it never existed. Commander Vector stared at the empty space on his view screen. Tears ran down his face. He had watched heroes die. He had lost friends to war. But this felt different. This felt like the universe itself had lost something precious. The Tarvo system fell silent. The battle was over. The coalition had won, but the victory tasted bitter. Thousands of ships had been destroyed. Millions had died. And the greatest sacrifice of all had come from people who were supposed to be dead for 500 years. On Tarvo's prime, Elena stood with her fellow survivors. The atmosphere was breathable again. The planet would heal. But the sky looked emptier now. The ghost ship that saved them was gone. She raised her hand to the stars in a gesture of farewell. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for keeping your promise." Dr. Seleni worked through the night cataloging the data the Phantom had sent. The files were enormous, 500 years of logs and records, technical specifications that would advance science by decades, personal stories that would break hearts and inspire courage. She would spend years studying this material. The galaxy would spend centuries learning from it. She found a message addressed specifically to her. Captain Santos had recorded it just before the final mission. "Dr. Seleni, you gave us something precious in our final hours. You gave us the knowledge that we would be remembered, that our sacrifice would mean something, that the galaxy would know what we did. For that you have our eternal gratitude. Use this information wisely. Teach the galaxy what humanity stood for, and never stop believing in the impossible." The Galactic Council met an emergency session. Ambassador Krell, who had dismissed the Ghost Fleet as superstition, stood before them with a very different message. He had seen the battle recordings. He had read Seleni's initial report. He spoke with the weight of someone who had been proven spectacularly wrong. "The Phantom was real," Krell announced to the assembled representatives. "Humanity's greatest ship sacrificed itself to save us. They protected this galaxy for 500 years without recognition or thanks. They asked for nothing in return. They simply believed that life was worth protecting. We owe them a debt that can never be repaid." The council debated for weeks. How do you honor heroes who no longer existed? How do you remember a ship that had been erased from time? Finally, they reached a decision. A memorial would be built at the exact coordinates where the Phantom made its final stand, a monument to sacrifice, a reminder of what true heroism meant. 50 years passed. The memorial grew into something grander than anyone imagined. It was not just a statue or a plaque. It was a living museum, a center of learning, a place where beings from across the galaxy came to understand humanity's legacy. The Phantom's crew members were honored individually. 300 faces carved in stone, each with their name and story. Children learned about Lieutenant Tanaka's navigation genius. Engineers studied Commander Rodriguez's impossible repairs. Medical students read Dr. Kim's notes on temporal biology. The crew became legends, but they were remembered as people first. Dr. Seleni, now elderly and respected, gave tours to young students. She told them about the day she decoded the logs. She showed them the technical data. She read them passages from personal journals. She made sure they understood that these were not mythical figures. They were real people who made an impossible choice. Humanity's descendants, scattered across hundreds of worlds, united in a way they had not since Earth's abandonment. They worked together to rebuild their cultural heritage. Using the Phantom's databases, they recovered lost art, music, literature, and history. Earth became a goal again, a dream. Someday they would return to the blue planet and make it live once more. Commander Vector, retired and honored, visited the memorial every year on the anniversary of the battle. He would stand before Captain Santos's statue and speak to her as if she could hear. "We kept your galaxy safe," he would say. "We learned from your example. We try to be worthy of your sacrifice. Thank you for everything." One year, an unusual event occurred at the memorial. Sensor readings detected something impossible. Brief temporal fluctuations, energy signatures that matched the Phantom's unique profile. Scientists investigated but found nothing. The readings vanished as quickly as they appeared, but those present that day swore they saw something. A shimmer in space, a sense of presence, the feeling that they were not alone. Some claimed they heard a voice carried on the solar wind. Others said they felt a warmth, like the embrace of a guardian who never truly left. Seleni, investigating the phenomenon with her remaining energy, discovered one final message hidden in the quantum fluctuations. It was damaged, fragmented, but readable. We watched still. Not as we were, but as we chose to be. A whisper in the probability wake. An echo of protection. Keep the stars safe. We are with you. She shared this finding with few people. Most dismissed it as sensor noise or wishful thinking. But Selene knew better. She had spent decades studying the Phantom's temporal technology. She understood that things which existed outside normal time did not die the way ordinary things died. They transformed. They persisted. They echoed. Perhaps the Phantom had not truly been erased. Perhaps it had simply returned to the probability wake where it lived for 500 years. Perhaps its crew, scattered across multiple timelines, still watched over the galaxy they loved. No longer as a ship. No longer as individuals, but as something more. A presence. A promise. A hope. Stories began circulating among frontier explorers. Ships that encountered impossible dangers and were saved by mysterious interventions. Colonies that should have failed but survived against all odds. Disasters averted by coincidences too convenient to be random. The galaxy attributed these events to luck. But a few wondered if something else was at work. The Ghost Fleet became legend again. Not as a myth to frighten children, but as a story to inspire hope. Parents told their young ones about the brave crew that sacrificed everything. Children grew up believing that heroes existed, that sacrifice mattered, that even when things seemed impossible, someone was watching over them. Elena, ancient now and near the end of her life, sat on Tarvos Prime watching the sunset. She thought about the day the Phantom arrived. She thought about her grandmother's stories that turned out to be true. She thought about the promise humanity made to the galaxy, to protect, to sacrifice, to never abandon those who needed help. As darkness fell, Elena saw something in the sky. A brief shimmer among the stars. A flicker of light that should not be there. She smiled, knowing no one would believe her. It did not matter. She knew what she saw. She knew who was still watching. "Thank you," she whispered one final time. "Thank you for never leaving us." The shimmer brightened for just a moment, as if acknowledging her words. Then it faded into the eternal night, waiting for the next time it would be needed. The galaxy continued its endless dance. Species rose and fell. Civilizations explored and discovered. Wars erupted and were resolved. Through it all, the memory of the Phantom endured, not as history, not as mythology, but as truth, as inspiration, as proof that even the smallest sacrifice could change everything. Humanity's descendants never forgot. They carried the story forward, generation after generation. They taught their children about Captain Santos and her crew. They explained what it meant to put others before yourself. They showed them that true heroism was not about glory or recognition. It was about doing what was right even when no one would ever know. At the memorial, carved in stone beneath the image of the Phantom, were the final words Captain Santos transmitted before the temporal collapse. Future generations would read them and understand what humanity stood for, what they died for, what they would always protect. The inscription read simply, "We were honored to serve. Keep the stars safe for us." The legend was real. The myth was truth. And somewhere in the spaces between moments, between possibilities and probabilities, the ghost ship sailed on. Watching, waiting, protecting, forever.